you, and that might be you, Manisha, and Charmaine so far. So hello to you, and Gavin. Hi, Gavin. So you may have just caught up on, overheard Jason and I kicking off what we're going to do today. I will get on and we'll record this, so as much as we can, we'll make something that can be useful to the people who couldn't get here today. But I will get started now. It's 1:05, and then there's time for questions. And when we get to the questions, I'll give you a chance to jump in. But if you can use the chat box on the Q&A thing as we're going along. The only thing I should point out is that I can only see the slides or those things. So I just need to keep tabs on how we're keeping track on you. If you could use the chat instead of the Q&A, that will be. Sorry, change that. If you can use the Q&A, if you can see the Q&A, please use that, because then you can actually see the questions that other people are asking. So sorry for jumping around there. So yes, we're going to look at the People's Award. We thought it would be useful to do an update. We've had a few questions about this. This is the first time we've done Crowdfunder, so of course we're a little unsure exactly how this is going to play out for you guys. We know it's a good thing, we know it can do good things, but we want to make sure it's doing the most useful thing for you. So we thought we'd drop in this update. We can do another one if we think it's helpful, because these things are relatively easy for us to set up, and also the timing may not be right today, so we may change the timing for a future one. I can see Karen has joined as well. Hi, Karen. So there's two of us on the call who are going to be pulling information together, myself in terms of hosting it, but Jason is here from Crowdfunder to give everybody an update on Crowdfunder news. And I know there are some questions about the overall People's Award process and how we're going to choose a winner, which I'll also discuss. We are in the middle of the People's Award voting. We've got 2 weeks left. We've had a couple of weeks. In previous years, we've only used Twitter hashtags. And at this point in time, we'd usually seen about 1/3 of the votes that we were going to get. So we know that there's a slope that we go up over the first couple of weeks where people get their ideas together and think about what they're going to do. And some people sort of straight out of the blocks, others just working out the best thing for them in terms of the opportunity. I think we're probably in the same position again. We've still got a couple of weeks to go to the awards ceremony. We're going to be looking on the last day, the 15th of July, we're going to be looking at the total figures then. So whatever we've got now is just an indication of who's doing what. It's not really necessarily the case that the people on the top of the leaderboard are going to be the people there on the last day. And equally, we do have this question about the mix between whether people are using Crowdfunder, and if they're not using Crowdfunder, what they could do. So I'll come to that in a second. I'm hoping you all are aware that there's a Tech4Good page on crowdfunder.co.uk. So crowdfunder.co.uk/Tech4Good, and that's what includes the leaderboard. If you are using the Q&A or the chat, could you just make sure? Could you let me know that you've seen that page, that you're aware of it? Because it's obviously important that you do know that that's the sort of home for where we're looking for the jumping off point for things. So Gavin says he's seen it. If you can, I just need to clarify that you're getting the information through, really, that you're not a step behind that, because if you are a step behind that, obviously I can take you back a step and explain a little bit more. Anyone else? Got Manisha and Gavin. Can I just check that anyone else on here could use the Q&A to just say whether or not they've seen that page and understand its significance? So I will actually, while we're doing that, I'll switch over to this is the browser view of it. It's got this leaderboard on it, which is indicating activity. So hopefully seeing that, great. I think that looks like you have. So the position we're in at the moment, I'll just show you what that leaderboard shows. It's got Boys 2, Hello World. What's that one there? Will you help transform digital disadvantaged lives? Let's see which project that is. AbilityNet, we've got a volunteer who's in the finals. Digit Music, that's in the accessibility. So you can see that the idea is that all of the finalists who are active in Crowdfunder will be represented on this leaderboard. I'll get Jason in a second to explain a little bit more about where the data comes from. But one of the key questions we've been asked at the moment is this the only leaderboard? I mean, in the sense that if you're not using Crowdfunder for some reason, there's lots of reasons why people haven't, or if you're still finding your way, I see actually there's Jason, apparently you're half the video, half the video screen, sorry. Let me see what happens when I do this. Has that helped? Somebody said that half the screen is Jason's video picture. Has that helped? If you could answer that. Nope. Don't know how to. Actually, it might be best if you turn your video screen off, Jason. That might be somebody saying it's taking up the screen. I can't see that at my end, unfortunately. So.
No, I've got your screen full. I think that's probably the way they're viewing it.
Oh, okay.
You're showing to me as your screen's full.
Okay, cool. Well, let's leave that as it is at the moment. If somebody needs some clarification in a moment, we can come back. So yes, we've got in previous years, and I will refer to previous years just so that you can understand why there are two things going on. In previous years, we gave you a hashtag. You promoted that hashtag as widely as you could. We could measure every time it was used on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, a couple of other places on the web generally. So the more times that your Twitter code was mentioned, then the more times you would get a vote. That's still in use. We can still track that. We have given you a code. The point about that code is it's a good way for you to promote yourself. So this is a good campaign for you to do if you're interested in just raising your profile, showing people that you've been selected as a finalist, getting all the kudos that comes from that, raising a profile amongst whichever supporters that you wanted to, or finding new connections. If you're putting stuff out on Twitter or social media using the hashtag, then when they share it and when they pass it around, then you get more votes. One of the ways that we measure it means that you can't send it out yourself 1 million times and get 1 million votes. But if 1 million different people voted for you, you'd get 1 million votes. So we had worked that out over the last few years, and broadly that the winning entry was the one that had done the most to generate the most active use of that hashtag. There were occasions when we could see that somebody had started from a relatively low base and achieved a great deal, whereas if other people had started and had a sort of a large following on Twitter, then obviously they would have an advantage. Sometimes we would even that out just to be clear that we were rewarding people who were putting the most time and effort in. That still exists this year, but of course our focus this year has switched a lot more to Crowdfunder. And the reason for looking at Crowdfunder is it really is about what you're trying to achieve and giving you a stepping stone and making a little bit more value out of Tech4Good for you. So if you can identify something that you want to achieve, and Tech4Good can be a platform for helping you do that through Crowdfunder, then we would feel that will be a lot more useful than just a lot of tweets that they may be good in terms of your profile raising, but they don't necessarily lead to some specific outcome. So we're looking at Crowdfunder being a new way for you to engage on the basis that you are a finalist in Tech4Good. We're learning with Jason how that works and how it can work best for you, and hence the point of this update may be that you'll be able to give us some insight into something that we can tweak in the next couple of weeks, or even something we can quite specifically help you with after this call. There may be very particular questions that you've got that we realize that we haven't been able to answer until now, and then we'll be able to pick that up and give you some feedback. The Crowdfunder doesn't stop the day we close the People's Award. That's another advantage really, is that once you're looking at crowdfunding as a promotional device for yourself, then it can continue. Whereas with the tweeting, once you were beyond the end of the People's Award, that hashtag had very little value. Whereas I think the Crowdfunder can be something that you can begin to think about working with beyond the Tech4Good awards and into, looking as part of your fundraising or profile raising process generally. So I hope that gives you a backdrop, and also may explain why there are a few holes in the questions that you're asking us. I've been asked quite a few questions by different people, beginning to see how this patchwork comes together. We are able to measure the number of times you use the hashtag, so you can use that if that's relevant to you. And we can clearly see on the Crowdfunder platform when you're using Crowdfunder and seeing what sort of feedback you're getting and how that's going. But I think the main question now is over to you, Jason, I think, to give us a little bit of insight about how you think things are going and some of the stuff that you can see that's happening. Let's see if I can share my screen with you. Swap screens with you.
Okay. Have you got those slides?
I can't open them because you shared them with Google, and I don't have them with my thing. So I'm just looking at, where's my share here? New share. Nope. Why can't I do this?
I think I can share. Hang on.
Can you? I think you might. If you might need to request it, is that? Yeah, there you go. I can see your stuff now.
Okay, great. So in terms of progress, I mean, we just looked at the page. I was just having a quick look at the numbers. So we've got 10 projects live on the platform now, and looks to be in total, I think we're getting towards about £18,000 raised, I think. I've not had a chance to do the maths totally, across all 10 projects. So some really great progress amongst the projects in terms of the support that they're receiving financially. Now, one of the things about crowdfunding that we said before, though, is that it's often the wider benefits that projects get through crowdfunding. Just wanted to remind everybody, so it's not too late to start. If you haven't got your page up yet, do give it a go. Do take it as an opportunity to try some crowdfunding. As Mark said, whilst there's, we've got a deadline for the awards ceremony, and the award will be announced at that point. It doesn't mean to say that the projects stop at that point, and you can keep going, keep pushing your campaign for as long as you want after the awards are finished. And just wanted to remind people about our guides that are really helpful, quite easy to follow, and have this kind of checkbox format where you can work through them, tick things off as you've done them. You can use them as a bit of a portfolio to build up your project as you're going through. So I thought it would be good just to, firstly, the wider benefits we mentioned at the networking event around crowdfunding that we often see is things like validation of the idea. So often we see people who think, they've got a really great idea, and go out and tell the public about it and get good feedback on it. That's really beneficial to the people running the project, and also can be useful to demonstrate your project and the public support for it to other people, like other funders or investors or suppliers, whoever that might be as well. And that feedback comes in real time as well. So when anyone pledges on a project, the pledger is asked to leave a comment. So you'll see on each crowdfunding page, there's a tab called comments. And if you look in there, you can see all the kind of positive comments that people are leaving about their projects. And sometimes those comments might be, and I can help you with that, or have you thought about this as well? So some really great real-time feedback that people get. The other one is about, you're going out there telling people about your projects. It's a real great opportunity to raise awareness of what you're doing. Get some funding at the same time, get the support from your projects, and tell people about what you're doing. It's a marketing exercise, really. And done well, you can look at how you can. We'll look at this in a little bit, coming up with different messages, listing them as marketing messages. We also find that people are gathering a body of supporters who become advocates for your project. And that's really how crowdfunding works, is you want to get people to support your project, and then the next thing is to get them to tell other people about your project. That's really what you're doing, whether you're doing it through Crowdfunder or Twitter, whichever method you're using. is to think about not only asking people to support you, but then getting them to share it and get other people involved as well. And lastly, we often find people get certainly extra funding, whether that's through the Crowdfunder platform or through other funders or investors who see that you're running a crowdfunding campaign and will chip in as well and encourage others to chip in as well. It's also a great chance just to gain some skills in fundraising and marketing and using social media as a fundraising tool as well. So that's why we were really keen to be involved with the Tech4Good Awards, is to help projects gather these various benefits that we know come through the process. One thing I thought would be useful to cover quickly is a little bit about finding your crowd. Now, this is useful if you've got a project on Crowdfunder at the moment, or if you're just using Twitter as well, is to think about who might support your project. So we've got one little example, not really a tech example, it's a bike. This is a project we work with called Cycling Without Age. On this picture, what you see you've got two older ladies sat on the front of what is a tricycle, and a volunteer rider who sits at the back. And these guys take the bike and they'll go to local care homes or sheltered housing, and they pick up a couple of people, sit them on the front of the bike, and they go for a ride through their town, through their village. And these guys were looking to raise money to get more of these groups off the ground, and it costs £6,000 to buy one of those bikes. They're Dutch made, quite expensive. So they crowdfunded. So it's a really simple idea. And so if we use that project as an example, what we're going to do is look at how, who is going to be interested in supporting that project, which groups of people might want to see that happen in their area. So we came up with 5 different groups. So firstly, you might have cyclists who see the project and think, that's great, that's getting older people out on a bike again, getting more people into cycling. Otherwise they might be getting in a taxi or on a bus. Let's get them on bikes. We've got older people. The people themselves, the older people, might see it and say, oh, I'd love to get on a bike and go for a ride through the village. That'd be great. We've got going around children of older people. By that, I don't mean kind of kids. I mean perhaps people kind of my age with parents who are older, maybe in care. You see that, you think, oh, that'd be great for my dad to get out on a bike again. He'd love it. The volunteers or the potential volunteers, all the bikes are ridden by volunteer riders. So there might be people in that area who would want to volunteer. And then lastly, just anyone who lives in the area who sees that and thinks, what a great idea. I'd love to get that in my city. So those are the different groups of people. And what we can then think about is for each of those groups of people, what message might attract them? And then that's the message that we're going to use through social media or through our advertising to attract some different groups of people. So I just put a couple in here. So for volunteers, your message might be, do you want to help tackle social isolation while getting some exercise? Pledge now to bring Cycling Without Age to Brighton. I'm based in Brighton, so that's why it says Brighton. Or for the older people, you might, it's covered up there. I think it says, it depends where the little box is covered on my screen. I think it says, would you like to feel the wind in your hair again and get out on a bike? Pledge now to bring Cycling Without Age to Brighton, and you'll be on your bike before you know it. And you can keep doing that for each of your different groups of supporters. Think about a message that you want to give to that particular group of supporters, and then a call to action, which is about asking them to support your project, pledge, or share the hashtag, whatever you want them to do. What you're doing here is you have different messages. Whenever you're running any kind of marketing campaign, you want it to feel dynamic. You don't want to just use the same image, the same messaging for all the 4 weeks or however long you're promoting it for. So this can be a really useful exercise to come up with a number of different messages, have an image that goes with each one, and kind of rotate them throughout your campaign alongside some more general, more overview type marketing of your project. So I thought that'd be a really useful exercise. You can do that now if you've not done it before, and just start rolling out some new different messages to attract people. You want to think about how you're spreading the word, particularly for those doing a crowdfunding campaign. Obviously, social media is important, particularly Facebook. I would have thought a lot of our projects get about 50% of their pledges coming through Facebook. So that's a really useful tool. But I think about doing a range of things. Email is great for more personal approaches. What we've not got on here is the telephone as well. So if you've got some people who you think might be willing to give you a larger donation or could really help boost your numbers by spreading through their networks, do get on the phone to them, ask them if they'll share. Press is really useful, particularly if your project's more locally focused. Local press just want content. If you can write the press release for them, send them some nice pictures, they'll usually publish it as well. So think about all the different ways you can spread your message. This is a useful exercise to do to help you with that. This is what we call our supporter canvas. Just really helps you think about all the different ways that you might reach your supporters, going from top left, thinking about the data that you hold, about potentially large donors, your email list, your team, staff, trustees, whoever's involved in your organisation. Your social media presence, we've put Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, but where you want to be sharing in the place where your supporters are and where they're engaging with you. So if that's Instagram, get on Instagram. Like I say, we usually see about 50% coming through Facebook. Twitter is great for sharing, but we don't see so much such high numbers of pledges coming through Twitter. Again, it depends on the audience. LinkedIn, better if it's a project that might attract professionals. Maybe it's a tool for people working in the sector or something. LinkedIn might be the place for that. You can also think about your different partners, organisations, individuals that you work with. And then we've got a section for unknowns, which is things like the press, TV. They're kind of things that you think might be useful, but you're not really sure how to measure them. And what you do with this is you start mapping it out. So on your Facebook, you might have 500 likes on your page. I've used the cycling example again here. Which other groups are out there that you might want to tap into? So that project was in Brighton. There's a group in Brighton called Brighton People that has 41,000 followers on that group. So if you can get your project shared on there, that's going to get you a lot more coverage. Twitter, again, you might have a following on Twitter, but also then you want to think about which individuals might you want to follow. So Boris Johnson, currently very high profile cyclist that everyone knows. Could you get him sharing that project? So you can use this to map out all the different places that you might get support, what you know about them, and who you need to reach out to. The other thing you might want to do is put names against those. So different people within your organisation might be doing the papers, TV, radio. Someone else might be doing the social media. You can just use this as a bit of a map, really, a roadmap as to how you're going to build your support. And again, that's a useful exercise, irrespective of which method you're looking to do to raise support for the People's Award. And you always start from the middle and work your way out. So always start with the people closest to you, get them to pledge, get them to share, and then ask them to work out from their networks as well. So what you want to do is get people to share initially or pledge initially through Crowdfunder. Once they've pledged, thanks for pledging. Now, please, could you share with people in your network? It's a bit like peeling the layers off an onion. You work your way out, and you want to be working further and further away from your network, encouraging people who aren't as close to share it as well. And then lastly, just for those using Crowdfunder, I don't know if you've done this yet, but do have a look at the information you're getting from the platform. So you get a dashboard if you log into your project on Crowdfunder. Gives you some really useful tools like these graphs, the top one that shows the number of visits your project's getting per day, by day. And then another one below, you can see that is the number of pledges. So you can see a spike on the 7th of May, both in page views and in pledges. That's really what you want to be seeing, that your two graphs match up in the profile. If you're seeing a high number of visits, but not a corresponding spike in pledges, You might want to think about your messaging. Was the messaging clear enough? Was it not quite the right audience you were attracting? And we also give you a conversion rate. So just above the timeline, it will say your conversion rate is 6.5%. So that's calculated from the total number of pledges versus the number of unique visits. So we normally say that 1 in 5, 1 in 20 is a good conversion rate. So that's 5%. So if you're getting around 5% or above 5%, that's pretty good. If you're below 5%, then perhaps you need to look at your page itself. Do people not understand what you're asking them? Is it not clear? And perhaps get some feedback from some other people. But ask people, send them the links. Say, could you have a look at this? Would you support my project? If not, what's the problem? Or if they say yes, then ask them how much they might pledge as well, and get some feedback from them. That's all useful. The dashboard will also tell you things like where your pledges are coming from. So we've got a graph there, a table that shows pledge sources. This project, as you can see, getting a high number of pledges from Facebook and coming direct to the page. If you've done any mail outs and you're using a tool like MailChimp, they would show us separate sources as well. So you can track actually which emails were effective or which methods be more effective for you. So, and what we would always say is if Facebook's working for you, do more on Facebook. If your pledges are coming through Twitter, just do more on Twitter. Use it to find out what's working and do more of the same. So I think that was all I had, Mark, on those. If anybody's got any specific questions.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Jason. I mean, I think that amongst all the sort of blizzard of information that I'm sure everyone's feeling that they've been given, I think that was really practical and straightforward. Personally, I mean, we're considering what we can do. We've got a finalist in the volunteer award, and he's itching to do stuff, and I can see immediately that there's some things that he's not sort of picking up on that we can advise him on, and your mapping as well of the finding your crowd was really helpful in terms of a sort of methodology that will be useful in lots of different ways in other areas as well, I'm sure. So no, that was great.
Network mapping is if you've never done it as an organisation, really great thing to do. I'd say get the whole team involved. You can start thinking about personal contacts as well. Oh, so-and-so. Up at Google, maybe they can get get them sharing, or whoever, who knows who is a really useful bit of that as well. And making the personal approaches as well. So that always helps. If you're asking people to pledge or just to share the campaign, personal approaches can be really effective. Picking up the phone. People don't get phone calls these days. They'll respond to a phone call much better than an email often. And it gives them a bit of a break and something different to think about.
Yeah. So I've got a couple of questions myself. If anybody on the call has a question, please use the question and answer box. One of mine is about, do you think there's any difference between the likely success in how much you ask for? I noticed that I didn't have anything to do with our AbilityNet one, just to be clear. I noticed that they're asking for £1, I think, or upwards of £1, something like that. That's how they've set it up. Although the donation here is set automatically to £20, I notice. So do you think there's anything in particular in there that's worth thinking about how you actually generate that support? Is it
I think
a high figure?
We've got different
motivated?
People using slightly different approaches, I think. So I think in this project that they're looking to get a good number of supporters, and it's partly about profile. So I think their target is relatively low, isn't it? So they've got a £1,500 target, and it's flexible funding. So their average pledge is quite low on that project. It's about £10. We've got some other projects that have got much higher targets, and they're really trying to raise some funds, more serious funds for their projects as well. So we've got actually the second project, number 2, is they've raised nearly £9,000
Oh wow!
with
Right.
a target of 20. So I think they're doing well because we've got about 2 weeks to go, and where are they? They're 44%. I think they should, if they keep doing what they've been doing, I think they'll hit their target. The last week is always the biggest week, and actually, not necessarily the last week, but a deadline is always good to push people. So even if people haven't started yet, we've still got 2 weeks to go. And actually, what you could just do is a good push over 2 weeks, particularly towards deadline, and really push people towards that. And that's really what helps get people giving, is that you're asking them to give, and they need to give now. And if they like your project, then they'll do it. Often, if there's still a couple of weeks to run, people will go, "Oh yeah, I do want to give to that, but not now. I'm a bit busy." So having a kind of a deadline like the awards to work towards can be a really useful kind of motivator for the crowd. Definitely.
Cool. So I think we've given a really good overview there. I'm not seeing any questions pop up. If you do have questions, anyone who's on the call, if you have any questions, please do use the question and answer, but also feel free to keep asking questions separately. Here we go. So Gavin, we didn't want to use Crowdfunder to raise cash, and also feel that as a profit with purpose at PLC, it would not have been suitable. We looked at the People's Vote as an alternative. Is there a People's Award board? There is. I can't pull it up at the moment, Gavin. So what we have is a piece of software called Brandwatch, which is where we can track the tweets. But you've raised an interesting point about not feeling that as a for-profit it would be suitable. Jason, what's your take on that? Gavin's from Neatbox, which is a business, but a business with a purpose. Sorry. I mean, you do have businesses using Crowdfunder, presumably.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what we find is that the crowd are a bit agnostic to company structure. So, they won't be bothered whether PLC, a CIC, or a CIO, whatever you are. What people do want to see is that you are a company that is making a difference. So, profit was purpose. That's pretty much how we describe Crowdfunder itself. We're a for-profit with purpose company. Those kind of projects do crowdfund really well. So, we work with loads of social enterprises and other organisations all the time using crowdfunding. It still can be a really useful tool. I mean, the other thing would be to think about, if you don't think it's right to raise funds for your product, use it as an opportunity just to raise the awareness. And perhaps raising a bit of money for a cause that you support along the way as well. But certainly, I think that isn't an issue in terms of the crowd and whether they give.
Gavin, I'm just going to turn on your voice. I just want to check with you. It's easier than trying to do the typing. Does that answer that? I mean, I understand that you were concerned. Do you think there's a reason you wouldn't use Crowdfunder for any other reason? Can you hear me, Gavin? I've turned your mute off, so you should be able to talk if you're there. Maybe that's not working. But I think I mean we're obviously in a learning mode with Tech4Good Awards and using Crowdfunder. So if there's anybody got questions like that, then do connect with us offline. We want to do as much as we can to promote your work to as many people as possible, and so we don't want you holding back on this just for your own reasons. If there's something we can do to set it up in a particular way, then we'll do our best to do that. Oh, Gavin's saying that he can't speak on that, so I'm trying to get some feedback from somewhere as well.
I think you might need to mute Gavin again. Or...
Yeah, that is the one. Sorry, yeah, I thought I had. Okay. Well, we're going to record this and share it around. I think if there's an appetite, we could do this again. So please do give us some feedback. Just let us know whether you thought this was useful on the Q&A. Was this a helpful session? We've gone like half an hour here. Did it give you, a bit of a boost in terms of your knowledge and maybe a new to-do list? We'd like to share it around to all the people who couldn't attend, obviously, and we could run it at a different time next time. If that was an issue. I'm very grateful, Jason, for all the stuff you've done. I think the crowdfunder is a good idea. It's hard for other people to see how much it's changed what we're doing actually in the awards. But I think if we can get it right and get people the support they need, you can already see some people, you know, if somebody raises £20,000 on the back of being part of Tech4Good Awards, that's fantastic. And hopefully we're giving people the support they need to do that. So, and also the encouragement and, you know, and a deadline, as you say, there's a deadline for the finalists as much as there is for their supporters, then obviously gets the action rolling. So.
Yeah,
Caroline is asking about slides. So if you were able to share those slides, I mean, the video will be shared, but if you had those slides as well, when you've given me permission to access them, Jason, then I'm happy to send those around if you're happy to share them.
Yeah, I'll PDF them and send them over. That's
brilliant.
Fine. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Cool. Well, thanks for joining, everyone, and good luck. And please do use email to Catherine or myself. You know, that's what we're here for as a point of contact for any questions you have. We've got 2 weeks to go to the ceremony. Hopefully you know who your guests are and you've told us, and that's all sorted out as well. But if not, then please do let us know. And we'll look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks' time and seeing all the action going on the leaderboard. So thanks, everyone, and have a good day.